I absolutely confess that this past week, I initially missed the news of the Bears giving Cole Kmet a long-term contract extension. Life gets in the way sometimes, and it's hard to pay attention to everything. And it certainly doesn't surprise me that he got a contract extension. I'm surprised that I was that unplugged to where I didn't catch wind of it initially. And I imagine a number of you are going to come on here, because I haven't exactly been the biggest Cole Kmet backer over his past 3 seasons with the Bears, and expect me to rant and rave about this and talk about, this is typical Bears football! But the reality is probably going to disappoint you a little bit. Because I think that, as the title suggests, the Bears giving Cole Kmet a contract extension actually makes sense. When you look at the deal itself, it's a 4-year, $50 million extension that technically keeps Kmet under contract to the team through 2027 if they so desire, with $22.8 million fully guaranteed, which is mostly going to apply over the first couple of years of the deal. You know, that amount is not anything that makes you jump up and say, oh my God, that's unbelievably stupid. Oh my God, why in the F would you do that? At least it doesn't for me. When you look at Kmet's career to date, he's played all 17 games the past 2 seasons. I think he missed, one game or didn't play 1 game in 2020. He stayed relatively healthy. You look at 2021, he had 60 catches, 612 yards. Because Matt Nagy was a fucking moron, he had no touchdown catches, of course, because why would you target the big guy in the red zone? And this past year, you could certainly point to one of the things that gutless Getsy himself, put him up. I'm the offensive coordinator. I've got courage. Don't insist that guy. Some of you are waiting for that, I'm sure. But there's one thing he did do a better job of, is trying to find ways to feature Kmet in the passing game, and certainly Justin Fields had a good connection with him, which matters. He had 50 catches for 544 yards and 7 touchdowns, which, if you were saying, like, that's the type of stat line you're expecting out of Kmet every season, well, you could get much worse out of the tight end position. And when you look at Kmet compared to his other peers on the team, his teammates that are also entering their 4th season in the league, it's the Cole Kmet extension to me that made the most sense to do right now. Now, it doesn't mean that Poles isn't going to sign 1 or 2 of these guys to extensions before the season. I'm saying Kmet was the one that made the most sense now. Because with Darnell Mooney, he's got to stay healthy, and you got to see what type of production he's going to have with DJ Moore being the clearly established top guy. Chase Claypool, you need him to show you anything. No urgency to give him a long-term deal whatsoever. Why in the fuck would you do that? And when you look at Mooney and Claypool, it's probably 2 for 1. 2 guys playing for 1 extension, basically. And he might end up not extending either one of them long-term. Jalen Johnson needs to show that he can stay healthy and any ball skills at all whatsoever. I feel no pressure, and neither apparently does Ryan Poles at this moment, nor should he, to give him a big contract extension. Travis Gibson has 10 sacks in 3 years. There's no rush on him. You can make an argument of, well, you give him a little bit more money now, and if he takes off in 2023, you feel like you've underpaid him. No. I'd rather Gibson show some urgency in his contract here. But when you look at Kmet, he's the guy that makes most sense based off of his position, based off of his performance relative to peers, etc. And when you look at this contract extension overall, look at the cap hits by year. In 2023, it's $7.36 million. 2024 through 2027, if he actually saw the entire life of this deal, which is always a question when it comes to NFL contracts, the cap hit each year is $11.6 million. That's the straight cap hit if you kept them, didn't tweak the numbers, didn't do anything else. And when you look at the contract, the Bears' outs, starting in 2025, 2026, 2027, are certainly better than you would have ever expected Ryan Pace to do in a goddamn contract. It's $4.8 million in 2025, $3.2 million in 2026, $1.2 million in 2027. So let's say you get past 2024, 2025, and you decide, no, Kmet's not the guy, he stinks all of a sudden, or he's hurt, or whatever the fuck. You can get out of the contract without very little dead cap, with very little long-term impact. And as I look at this contract the Bears gave Kmet, they basically gave him a top 10 tight end contract to a top 10-ish tight end. So the contract relative to the player and the performance is weirdly kind of aligned to each other, which you don't see a lot, right? Like when you look at the quarterback market, for example, Justin Herbert just signed the biggest contract extension for a quarterback until Burrow or somebody else signs their massive extension, right? But Herbert's certainly not the best quarterback in the NFL. For the Bears to get this extension done now, maybe Kmet gave him I'm a Bears fan, Bears football is in my blood kind of discount. I don't fucking know. But they gave a contract to him that feels appropriate to the marketplace and the player and performance. All the while, they still have the most cap space this year. They are top 3 as a team in 2024 cap space at the moment. When you look at Kmet's contract, it's less than 5% of the cap for a starter that has a good rapport with their starting quarterback, Justin Fields. And if you're looking ahead long term, you say, if Justin Fields is the type of guy that you end up having to give a massive contract to, this Cole Kmet contract isn't a big hindrance or impact to you. You wanted to get this fucking deal done now. This was actually very smart. You have to pay some people. The future outs here are pretty good. And especially when you talk about the positional value. That's the key thing, right? Like when you look at Mooney, you look at Claypool, you look at Jalen Johnson, you look at Travis Gibson. I say with the Bears' combination of cap space and draft picks next year, you could address some of those holes and feel good about being able to fill them. But tight end is a really, really hard position to draft for, right? We know that. Tight end is a position that it can take guys longer to get up to the curve in the NFL. And if you move on from Kmet, there is no guarantee that you're going to fill him with a guy that is equivalent, let alone better. I don't think Cole Kmet is great, but he's certainly not terrible. He is acceptable for what the Bears look for out of their tight end. He is acceptable for this offense. And this contract, to me, is acceptable. It allows the Bears to allocate other resources in other places where you can more easily find guys available via trade market, free agency, the draft, what have you. And it doesn't preclude them. What Cole Kmet got in this contract absolutely does not preclude them. Let's say the Bears next year somehow end up in position to draft a guy like Brock Bowers out of Georgia. This type of contract does not prevent you from taking a guy like Bowers. It absolutely does not. So when you look at this overall, relative to position, the amount that he was given, the Bears' current state, as much as it's fun to come on here sometimes and rail about Bears football, the reality is this was a solid, not spectacular, but certainly solid, understandable, and I'd argue justifiable move for this front office. Get this extension done now, and you don't have to worry about it. It made sense to do it now. The future outs are good as long as you don't try to get cute in the future to create additional cap space. Like, everything about this to me makes sense. There are other things that I question about Ryan Poles. This move, this contract extension, is not going to be one of them.